yes, resolve. We know the word, but what am I sort of referring to? Well, yeah, as I was saying, we can think that meditation is a good idea, but then find when we think it'd be a good idea to get up and meditate every day, that when we get up, we're not interested. We're more interested in lying in bed. Ever had that experience? Yep. But then interest is a kind of fickle thing, isn't it? So can we just sort of rely on our interest? Can we just sort of meditate when we're interested? Well, probably if we do that, we won't get very far either. If you want to get somewhere with anything of value, you need to be able to sort of work with it, don't you? I was remembering a friend talking to me who was wanting to get fit. It's a classic example of this, isn't it? And he would find that he'd come round to that day when he was meant to go out for a run, and he wouldn't want to. He wouldn't be interested. He'd be interested in kind of sitting in his chair. And the way he worked with that was he said, okay, I won't go for a run. I'll just go for 100 meters. And that kind of worked because he'd get his gear on, he'd get out there, and after he'd done 100 meters, you think, oh, well, I might as well carry on now. So that kind of worked. So this is sort of this is the territory that I'm kind of wanting to open up. That we need to really acknowledge what our interest is. That actually we're not interested in meditating at the moment, but not just take that at face value. We need to look to sort of resolve. In a way, our interest is almost always divided. We've got kind of competing interests. So we need to look at how we can kind of resolve our conflicting interests. So we need to be a bit intelligent. So resolve brings out this aspect of sort of intelligent application. This is what we're interested in doing. At the moment, I'm sitting here on the cushion, but I'm not really interested in meditation. Well, how can I sort of intelligently sort of negotiate, mediate my interests so that I can actually genuinely get interested in the meditation? And this is because, as we know with many other activities, if we're just going through the motions, we never really get very far, do we? It is possible just to sort of think this is a good idea and just to continue to do it. It is possible to do that with meditation or with our work. But we're not really that present, are we? So this is another aspect of resolve that, in a way, if we go through something, going through the motions, if we do something just going through the motions, it's a bit like a mental level. We're divided. It's very easy to do this with meditation. You say, okay, I'll get on the cushion. I don't really want to, and you just get on, but you don't engage with that, with what your real interest is, being not on the cushion, being somewhere else. So what happens is your interest is divided. Now that's really, really important to acknowledge, because what we're doing with meditation is we're working with the mind. And what we find when we try to do that, what we learn with meditation is what we do with the mind shapes the mind. Yeah. So if you meditate thinking actually is, you know, the sort of unconscious or below conscious sort of narrative is, I don't really think this is going to have an effect. I'd really rather be doing something else. But we're carrying on meditating. Well, that's what you're doing with your mind. Your mind is divided. That's what you're doing with your mind. You're not really kind of meditating. You're sort of half meditating. Half of you is meditating, and half of you is kind of is thinking, oh, this isn't really going to work. Well, that's what you're doing with your mind. So what we need to do in meditation is we need to resolve that kind of contradiction, those contradictory sort of divided sort of interests. And that way we can actually have more of an effect on the mind. So it's a bit like the more of your mind you can get involved, the more of an effect that will have on the mind. Very like the example I gave of my friend not really interested in going for a run, but he got himself going. And then in the process, he discovered the motivation and to carry on. So meditation can be very like that. So what I'm going to suggest we do is we work in this way with kind of resolve. So we sit down and we really sort of notice, tune into and value interest. Now you're all here tonight, so you're all interested at some level. There is some interest there. So we can kind of sit down and tune into that, really value that, because that's really, really important. Otherwise we just meditate with our heads. So this is a good idea, come on, let's get back to it. Actually, no, we need to be interested. So we can acknowledge our interests, but also acknowledge that there are competing interests. Even acknowledge that we're not really sort of wanting to do this at the moment. That's very, very important. That we acknowledge that our interests, some of our interest is kind of going in a different direction, and that means that we can then find resolve. We can sort of intelligently come to some sort of resolve as to how to proceed. So what I mean by that is we can we can think to ourselves, okay, this is where I'm at the moment, but I feel I can at least just keep coming back to the breath, or I feel I can at least just concentrate on the breath lower down in the body. That's what I mean by resolve, something that I feel that I can do right now. And if you can emotionally find an emotional resolve like that, it's much, much easier to continue to engage with the practice. Last thing I want to say is often what we do is we think, or very easily what we do is we think in terms of motivation, we think, this is where I want to get to. Now that works in all sorts of areas of life. You can kind of motivate yourself to run by getting to the thinking about the finish, can't you? With meditation, that's not going to work very well. It's much better. It's a bit like the journey. Forget about the full journey. Forget about the destination. Think more kind of, as it were, tree to tree. Yeah. So it's a bit like when we're working with the mind. You sort of can't see the wood for the trees. You don't really know where you're going, but you can see a little bit ahead. You can see kind of to the next tree. Well, that's what your resolve is. You're kind of resolving, okay, well, I'm a bit distracted. I'll just engage with the breath, experience the breath lower down in the body and see what happens. That's your resolve. And then when you get to that tree, when you've done that for a bit, you get to that tree, you stop and you have a look. Have I actually come any distance? Has this made a difference? And then once you've had that reflection, you can kind of think again, okay, where am I going to go now? You look, as it were, metaphorically for your next tree. Where do I need to go now? And then you make a resolve as to something you feel you can do to get there. So that's what I'm going to suggest. That's what I'm suggesting we do in this practice, and I'm calling this resolve. So this is working sort of with an intelligent application. At each stage we sort of stop and apply sort of intelligence, use our intelligence, aware of our interests and our competing interests, and we come to a sort of intelligent resolution, a resolution of head and heart as to how to proceed. And this aspect of kind of looking back as to where you come from is really important, actually, because as I say, what we do with our minds shapes our minds. So you don't need to be supremely confident that you're going to get to this destination. All you need to do is you need to do something with your mind. You need to meditate with your mind. So you need to bring your intelligence and your interest to bear down on this moment of meditation, on the breath in this particular meditation, because we're doing the mindfulness of breathing. Yeah, so if we can do that, we can look back and notice, aha, the mind has changed in some small way. And that is where we find our motivation. So in a way, our motivation we find through doing it, because if we do meditation, we experience that the mind changes. So really, really key that we get interested, we get the mind interested, so that, and then we apply that interest intelligently, so that we actually get on with focusing on the breath. If we do that, what we do with our minds shapes our minds. So in this way, we kind of change our minds. And of course, what we discover when we change our minds is actually we change our lives. So that's one of the discoveries of meditation. So perhaps that's enough for now. We can now get hold of our cushions and go and sit on our cushions and prepare for meditation. So I'll lead us through a meditation. So if you'd like to just settle yourself on your cushions. So important that you're comfortable and you've got stable posture and an alert posture. So just see if you can find those two qualities in your posture as you sit on your cushions or on your chair. Great. Okay, so now you're sitting on your cushions or chair, you're set up in your meditation posture. So closing your eyes. And just giving yourself a moment for your actual experience in this moment to reveal itself, to emerge into your awareness. Don't need to do anything, just let your experience emerge, the sensations of the body. Feeling the ground underneath you, supporting you. Feeling the whole body breathing. And the breathing can take us deeper into our experience, just letting the breathing, letting the body breathe you. Noticing the mental weather as it currently is. What's the sort of mood of your thoughts, tenor of your thoughts? Quite calm, or flitting through your head? Are they following a particular theme or jumping associatively? Just letting them be what they are for now. and breathing with whatever's going on, noticing the mood. And so now seeing as you notice your mood, becoming aware of any sense of interest in meditation, interest in really learning how you can work with your mind, shape your mind, change your mind. And also noticing any sense of interest, it may be that you're not that interested. Well, that's great, just acknowledging that. That's what's actually happening now. And the journey of meditation starts only with what's happening now. And then giving a bit of time for the sensations of breathing to sort of interest your attention. Let's take the approach of not knowing the breath. And finding it in the body, where in this moment are the sensations of breathing. And letting the body breathe you. If we control the breath, it will be less interesting. See if you can just relax that sense of control. And so with whatever's happening, with wherever your interest is, now seeing if you can resolve how best to work in this first stage of the practice. So it's helpful adding the counting to sort of support your resolve. So the first stage of the mindfulness of breathing. And with your resolve, making sure it's something you feel you can do in this first stage. Something you can get behind, you feel, I can do that. In that way, it's an emotional resolve, not just an idea. And trusting yourself, trusting in the resolve that you decided on. May not be perfect, but just trusting it for now. That's what we're doing in the practice. And just coming back to that, the mind goes off. That's fine. This is what we've resolved to do. So coming back to your resolve. Feeling the resolve in the body. And when the mind goes off, that's fine. That's what minds do. And coming back to our resolve. Trusting in your resolve. And now as we come towards the second stage, just stopping for a moment and noticing, has there been any change? Just looking back, as it were, the distance you've come, or from where you've come. And then as we move into the second stage, we find a new resolve. Think of a way you can work, you feel you can do, on the basis of the awareness of what happened in the first stage. As it were, finding your next tree. Something you feel you can do through this next stage where we count just before the in-breath. And we're counting 1 up to 10, and then we go back to 1 again. The counting is just supporting our resolve. Supporting the continuity of staying with the resolve. Perhaps you've resolved just to stay aware of the breath, lower down in the body. Whatever it is. is. Whatever it is you feel you can do in this stage. Counting just supports us to come back to that. In this way, we explore what we do with the mind, shapes the mind that we experience. So dropping any concern for the final destination, just as it were, meditating tree to tree. And now as we come to stage 3, just stopping for a moment and looking back, as it were, where you've come from in this meditation. In this way, letting into your awareness any changes in your mind, subtle changes. From what you've been doing with your mind. Here, meditating. And then thinking intelligently about how to engage in this next stage. Metaphorically looking for the next tree and then resolving that's what you're going to do. Resolving that's something you feel you can do. This next stage where we drop the counting. And when the mind wanders off, that's fine. We're just coming back to our resolution. Don't worry, just come back. And then again, before the fourth stage, just stopping for a moment and looking back where you come from. Has what you've been doing with your mind shaped and changed your mind? Just noticing. And then again, resolving something you feel you can do. Checking that interest is still there in the practice. If not, maybe you need to come back to that. Checking you're practicing in the moment from where you are now. And now as we come to the end of the practice, towards the end of the practice, drop in the effort you're making in this important stage of the practice, just sitting. Making no effort. Just aware of the mind. Absorbing the fruits of your efforts. And then as I ring the bell, we're going to draw the practice to a close. Starting to become aware of the sounds in the room around you. Aware of everybody else tonight, here at meditation night. Sensations of your body. And as and when you're ready, opening your eyes to become aware of the visual sense just giving yourself a moment to transition out of meditation, sitting more comfortably. These transitional moments are important, both going into and coming out of meditation. And now we've got just a short bit of time for any questions or comments kind of coming up. Very interesting to know how you got on with that. Whether you managed to work with this sort of skill, you might say, of resolve, of kind of using our intelligence to build on our interest, the interest that's there, to actually manage to stay, keep our mind interested in the meditation, so that more of our mind is involved and we're actually doing what we're doing with our mind. It's not just going through the motions, it's meditating, it's focusing on the breath. Great, yes. Any questions coming out about this? Any experiences to share of how you got on with that? Hello, Monica. Nice to see you there. Here with us. Yeah, so if you've got questions, just add them in the chat box, and that way, what will happen is Liz will read them out for us.
Can I ask you a question, Arthasiddhi?
Yeah, please do, Liz.
It was about when you talk about intelligence and interest, they sound like sort of quite head things, which I don't think is what you're saying, is it? Because it's sort of like emotional intelligence and like sort of a somatic experience that you're combining. But I was just interested in that. They're both words that kind of I would automatically associate with head rather than heart. Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think the intelligence certainly sort of is that. I mean, in a way, I was sort of talking about the two coming together. We need to be sort of working intelligently in the practice. We need to be, in a way, thinking, not discursively, kind of thinking about other topics, but sort of thinking into the practice. So this kind of this practice of stopping and noticing, and then thinking, okay, well, how is it most helpful to engage in this way? We need to be sort of thinking, aha, actually, I'm not really that interested. I need to change my approach. Well, that's a thought. So we need our intellect, our intelligence involved in the practice. But that's not enough. It's not enough to be kind of thinking. We actually need to be interested. So it's interesting. You for you, the word interest is intellectual, and yeah, that's certainly not what I'm getting at. I'm talking about sort of an emotional engagement when you're not interested. You can tell when if you're with someone and they're asking you questions, but they're not really interested. They're just going through the motions. We know immediately that that's the case, don't we? This person isn't really interested. They're asking me questions, but they're not really interested. Well, that's an emotional thing. Interest is a kind of emotional engagement. Yeah, so we really need that involved in the practice. If we're not interested, we're a bit like that friend who's listening to us, but not really listening to us. Well, that's what it'd be like with the breath. We're kind of, the breath, 1, 2, 3, but we're not really there. We're not really present to the breath. well, that means that actually our interest is going somewhere else. Our emotional interest is kind of going somewhere else. Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about. These two aspects of intelligence and interest kind of they come together in resolve. Yeah. So I hope does that clarify what I was meaning a bit more, Liz, for you?
Yeah, thank you. There's no more questions come up so far on the YouTube, but Andy's he's just made a comment, which is very lovely. So I'll read you that.
Oh yeah.
That just says, "Lovely, a deep and tranquil meditation. I felt as if I had permission to be immersed with little recourse to rational mental effort."
Ah, yeah, interesting. Yeah, good. Immersed with little need for recourse to rational mental effort. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that's one of the aspects of getting the emotions involved. If your emotions are involved, you can just start to give yourself over to the breath. Probably there is an aspect of intelligence engaged in that experience, but because we're emotionally involved, we don't need to do a lot of thinking. It's not a sort of discursive experience. That's where meditation can lead, can't it? We know that from any other experience of kind of getting concentrated. If we're reading a book, you just completely forget about what's going on around you and time and what you did during the day. You just emotionally involved in the book. You sort of switch off in a positive way. Switch off by only focusing on one thing. So it's it sounds like there's that aspect in your experience, Andy, which sounds well, obviously it's very rewarding experience, isn't it? Yeah. And it's got this aspect of resolve. We're kind of more resolved, head and heart coming together. Great, thanks for sharing that, Andy. Great. So, have we any more questions, or should we move on?
David's just posted a question.
Oh yeah.
He says he's wondering, having made a resolution at the outset of each stage, is it okay to adapt as we go along if we're having difficulty with it, or should we try to stay with it?
Oh yeah. That's a good question. Yeah. I think in my experience, I would sort of say yes and no, because I think one of the things you want to do with resolve is stick with it. So if you in the first stage resolve to do something, and then 2 minutes later you think, oh no, this isn't quite right, I'll do something else, and then 2 minutes later you do something else as well, you sort of undermined your sort of trust in yourself that you will sort of stick with it, if you see what I mean. So I think therefore you need to be a little bit careful about how much you're changing your resolve. So do sort of trust even if it's slightly wrong, that will become more evident if you sort of stick with it. If you see what I mean. You will be changing your resolve when you come to the next stage. So I think that can be helpful. At the same time, sometimes it's obvious. If I just do a bit more of this, then that's going to take me deeper into the practice. I think sometimes it can be obvious. We don't want to be sort of go to the other extreme of a sort of pig-headed kind of insistence on, well, I started this, so I'm going to finish it. That's not quite the what I'm getting at either. Yeah, so I think the middle ground is where you're trying to be. If you find yourself kind of changing your resolve frequently through the practice, is that undermining your you're sticking with it. You see what I mean? Yeah, but at the same time, it can be good to be sensitive to what's coming up in the meditation and adjust. Yeah, I hope that answers responds to your question, David. That's certainly my experience. Great. Well, if there are no more questions at this stage, we'll move on because we're coming towards the end of the class. Yeah, next week we'll be looking at the metta bhavana. We alternate between these two key practices, the mindfulness breathing and the metta bhavana. And also next week we're doing a course, so not here on YouTube, but on Zoom. So if you're interested in that, you can find details on the Cambridge Buddhist Centre website. I think Samudra Ghosh is just adding that to the chat, adding the link to the live chat. So you find the link there. And what that's about is it's at the moment in lockdown, there's a really good opportunity for us to kind of set up routines that really support us to cultivate mindfulness. In a way, for a lot of us, our life is slightly simplified, and that in a way it can be a restriction, but on the other hand, it can be an opportunity to really get to grips with working with your mind. Well, this course runs over 8 weeks, and it's a course in mindfulness. So it'll get you kind of really getting to grips with how you can bring that this skill, this quality of mindfulness, this capacity, this human capacity of mindfulness into effect in your life. The course is called Life with Full Attention. So it's really about just sort of developing greater attention for the life you're living. So Samudra Ghosh is going to be leading that course. So if you're interested in that, it's a free course. You need to come and book through the Cambridge Buddhist Centre. Great. And then the last thing to say is just that that meditation, in fact, all our activities, our online activities, are run on a dana, what we call a dana basis. So dana is the Buddhist word for generosity, and really it's a foundational principle of meditation and Buddhism. I've talked about the significance of it last week and 3 weeks ago with the metta bhavana. So really what we're wanting to do with our activities with meditation and Buddhism is we're wanting to invite you into a culture of generosity. That's much more the spirit that we are engaging with. For example, online activities, we were not sure, we're not charging for anything. Financially, that's quite a risk for us to take. But we know that in lockdown, things like meditation are incredibly valuable to people. So we just wanted to make that available in any way that we could. So that's the spirit in which we're engaging. But similarly, we're kind of inviting you into that because that will support the unfolding of your mind. That's what I mean by generosity being a sort of foundational principle in meditation and Buddhist meditation in Buddhism. So that's what we're wanting to do with these classes. That's how we're wanting to proceed. And we're doing that mindful that it's a bit of a risk for us, and that we do need money in order to continue with activities. So if you're in a position to give, then please do consider doing that. You can give, Samudra Ghosh will add the link online, and you can go to that donate page. If you want to give just £3-5 for every activity you come to, well, that's great. That'd be really really well received. If alternatively you can actually, if you're coming regularly, if you can convert that into a standing order, that's also possible at the same stage. The same page. And that's really, really helpful for us, because it allows us to plan our activities, which is really, really important for us being able to make available more and more. So if you're in a position to give, please do give. Not just because we need money, but actually also give to experiment with what effect it has on you, giving. Explore this principle that's there in the Metta Bhavana of giving to help other people. That's what you will do if you give money to the Buddhist Center. It will help other people. You'll be helping other people learn to meditate.